The moon, our silent guardian, our cosmic companion, has watched over Earth for billions of years. It has guided sailors across uncharted waters, pulled the tides with an invisible hand, and illuminated the darkness for every creature that ever dared to look up. But what if the moon had never been? Imagine if something destroyed our moon. That would be crazy. That's exactly what we'll explore today. What if Rayquaza had destroyed the moon like it destroyed Grand Meteor Delta? How did the moon form in the first place, and how does it affect Earth? How would the Earth be different if it had no moon? I guess it wouldn't be that bad. I mean, it would just get darker, right? Not at all. The moon has been responsible for stabilizing the Earth's tilt to ensure predictable climates and seasons. The moon is also responsible for the majority of tides. Without tides, Earth would have weaker ocean currents, which would probably result in less biodiversity and perhaps even less life overall. How come the moon is so important? Also, aren't moons supposed to be tiny compared to the planets they orbit? Excellent questions. About 4.5 billion years ago, the solar system was a violent place. Planets were still forming, colliding and merging, and in the chaos, a Mars-sized protoplanet called Theia was on a collision course with Earth. Sounds like the start of a sci-fi movie, right? However, this is not sci-fi. It's science. Let's see what I did there. Anyway, Theia smashed into Earth at an angle, probably at thousands of miles per hour. The impact was so intense that it melted both planets, throwing trillions of rocks and metal into space. For a while, Earth itself might have had a massive ring like Saturn. Wow. Imagine gazing up at the night sky and seeing rings like Saturn's up close. Indeed. Of course, that was relatively short-lived as the ring of debris started clumping together due to gravity, forming what would eventually become our moon. Perhaps unsurprisingly, this means the moon was made of the same stuff as Earth, except it was mostly born from the lighter elements, since most of the heavy metals stayed behind on Earth. Okay, that explains our moon. What about other moons? Our moon came from a giant impact, but other planets got their moons through different processes. Some moons were originally asteroids drifting through the early solar system. If they passed too close to a planet, the planet's gravity could pull them into orbit. That's how Mars got its tiny potato-shaped moons, Phobos and Deimos. Some moons formed at the same time as their planets, from the same disk of gas and dust. Jupiter's moons, like Ganymede, and Saturn's moons like Titan and Europa, are thought to have formed this way, like mini solar systems around their planets. I guess you could call it a planetary system. Well, ironically, no. Did you know that a day on Earth used to be only 6 hours long when it was newly formed? It's only thanks to the moon's sizable gravitational influence on the Earth that it could affect the Earth's angular momentum, its rotation. Oh, on that note, but also a different note, the Earth is tilted 23.5 degrees on its axis. This tilt gives rise to the 4 seasons experienced by those countries with temperate climates. However, the consistent gravitational pull of the moon acts as a stabilizer that keeps the Earth from wobbling too much from its tilt. What would happen if Earth wobbled too much though? Then the Earth wouldn't have predictable, reliable seasons. That would probably render modern agriculture impossible, which would mean that we wouldn't have been able to advance as a species. In fact, many species with limited cognitive capacity rely on the predictable patterns of the changing climate to know when best to reproduce, go into hibernation, and so forth. It is completely possible that life as we know it would not have formed without the moon. I guess the moon is extremely important after all, but what has Rayquaza got anything to do with all of this? Rayquaza lives close to the ozone layer. But what about before the ozone layer existed? Now, the ozone layer first began forming only around 600 million years ago. Rayquaza was fashioned from minerals that permeated the ozone layer. This tells us that Rayquaza could not have destroyed Theia, but could still destroy the moon. Objection! The moon is so much larger than Grand Meteor Delta. True, the moon is approximately 100,000 times the size of Grand Meteor Delta, which would mean that Rayquaza would have to plummet through a layer of rock 100 times as thick as Mount Everest is tall. How could Rayquaza do it though? Well, Mega Rayquaza destroyed Grand Meteor Delta, which was on a collision course for Earth, meaning it was falling at something like 20,000 meters per second. Since the relative velocity of Mega Rayquaza and Grand Meteor Delta was not much, we can safely assume Mega Rayquaza can travel at about 20,000 meters per second or 45,000 miles per hour, which is almost 60 times faster than it took for my words to reach your ears. No wonder nobody can see it move. Using the drag equation, we can approximate the work done by Rayquaza when traveling through a continuous layer of rock. Doesn't the moon have layers though? Let's just get a first order approximation. If we do, we find that Rayquaza is slamming into debris with the force of Mount Everest just pressing over it. So the energy needed to exterminate Grand Meteor Delta is like the energy of a Boeing 747 at cruising speed. Guess what the energy of crushing the moon is like? The energy of 100,000 Boeing 747s? I mean, you're not wrong. Firstly, the collision would result in the release of enough energy to provide for all humanity for a year, or about 5 times more energy than the Tsar bomber, the largest nuclear bomb ever created. Next, the impact would almost likely cause huge chunks of debris 1 to 10 kilometers in radius to fly out at ludicrous speeds towards Earth, pulled by gravity, which would certainly cause the worst mass extinction ever, possibly wiping out 99% of all species. the meteor shower would last for thousands of years. Finally, the sudden lack of a moon would cause the Earth's tilt to destabilize by about 40 degrees, resulting in wildly unpredictable climates, extreme seasons, and more frequent ice ages. Wow, out of all of the weather trio super ancient Pokemon, out of all of the super ancient Pokemon, Rayquaza is definitely the most dangerous and powerful. Well, it makes sense. Rayquaza is powerful enough to nullify the effects of Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre, and to stop them from battling and threatening the destruction of the planet. Yeah, I don't see humans outliving this one. Well, if we develop an anti-meteor defense mechanism in time, we could potentially prevent a mass extinction, but that might require the development of nuclear bombs 10 times more powerful than any we've previously made. That's right! Nothing is stopping Rayquaza destroying us all if it really wanted. Sadly, you're right. Luckily, it only comes down to our level if Kyogre and Groudon are fighting each other. What's their deal again? Click here to find out.